We're now doing the demonstration of a command line installation of SQL Server 2012. As you can see on the screen, I've got a command line window open and a notepad document. In the command line window, I recently ran setup.exe /?. This is going to give me a list of all the available parameters that are available for the SQL Server installation. We can see all the available parameters by simply scrolling up in the window. I'm not going to be covering what all these parameters are because a lot of these relate to various other portions of the installation process. But I do want you to know that these various parameters are available and that you can simply find them by running the installer with the setup.exe /?. Looking at the notepad document, you'll see that I've got a setup.exe command listed out with a variety of parameters. I'm using the /Q parameter so that we don't show the installation process on the screen. I'm using the I accept SQL Server license terms parameter to allow the installation to continue. This is required by Microsoft's legal department. Without specifying that parameter, the command line installation will fail. I'm using the action parameter to tell the installer I wish to do an installation. I'm using the features parameter to tell SQL Server a comma-separated list of what features I want to install. In this case, I'm using the SQL Server database engine and the tools. The instance name will be MS SQL Server. The SQL Service account will be bacon/SQL Server, bacon being my domain name, and SQL Server being the account I wish to use. The SQL Service password is specified there. You'll want to obviously substitute whatever your password is, and you'll see the SQL sysadmin account parameter specified as well, giving myself admin rights to the system. Because I don't want to type all this information out, I could either save this as a batch file or simply copy and paste it into the command window. I'm going to go with the copy and paste route. I now have my command all set up, so I can press enter, and the installation should proceed without error. Installing SQL Server 2012 takes quite a while, even from the command line when we're not actually going through everything. Once the installation at the command line has been completed, you'll simply be dropped out of the installer back to the command line. As you've seen, there's been no change to anything on the screen other than the fact that the window is running. If there were any error messages, they'd be displayed in the command window, not as pop-ups outside of the command window. We can make sure that SQL Server is actually installed by going into our Start menu and simply seeing all the SQL Server components shown on the screen. We can see Management Studio in the lower right-hand corner of the various SQL Server icons, as well as things like Profiler, Reporting Services Configuration Tool, the SQL Server Installation Center, and SQL Server Data Tools. Even though we didn't specify that each one of these should be installed, as we specified the global style of components we wanted to install, the installer makes some assumptions for us and installs all these various other pieces as well. Most of these icons are here because we selected to install the tools, which would include Management Studio, SQL Server Data Tools, as well as various other components. When we want to use SysPrep to do our installation, this is when we're going to want to work with multiple virtual machines, when we're going to create a base template machine which we're then going to clone out to other virtual machines. We can use these for physical servers as well, although this is typically used for virtual machines more than anything else. What this does is it allows for the pre-installation of the SQL Server binaries, or the bits, to create a gold image. We then take that gold image and we then clone it out, making all the various virtual machines that we want to use. Once we've got the bits installed, we can then create the actual instance itself post-imaging. Now, SQL Server introduced the SysPrep process with SQL Server 2012. Because of some feedback from various people, SQL Server has enhanced the process with Service Pack 1. So if you install Service Pack 1 and slipstream it into your installation media, you will actually get a much more enhanced version of the process. I'll be showing you the RTM version as this is a certification course, and certifications are based on the RTM version and have not yet been updated. Let's go ahead and look at a demonstration of how to do that installation. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and launch the SQL Server installer, just like we did on our normal full installation machine. The SysPrep process is done from the traditional installer. Once the traditional installer is up and running on the screen, we'll then be able to launch into the actual SysPrep process. Once the installation center is on the screen, we can click on Advanced, and we'll get the two options that we're going to need to do this process. The first one is the image pre-preparation of a standalone instance of SQL Server. The second one is the image completion of a prepared standalone instance of SQL Server. Right now, we're going to use the first one to actually get our installation prepared and get the bits put on the disk. We click this link, and we're going to get a very familiar-looking installer. We do the standard rule check, checking basically the same things we were checking before as part of the normal SQL Server installation process to make sure that we can go through the installation process. This is a new virtual machine from the virtual machines we've seen previously in this section. Once everything is passed, we can click OK and move on to the next phase of the installation. We get the normal license terms that we expect, again with the same send featured usage data to Microsoft option that was available before. We click Next, and we do the product update search. Again, my virtual machines don't have internet access, so I'm going to prevent that process from running. Once the initial installation is done, we do the setup support rules check to make sure that we can actually install SQL Server on this machine. Once we've verified everything, and again, we get the same warning here for application security that we got before. You can click Next. We are then shown the list of features we can install. As you can see, there are a lot less features supported by sysprep than there are available in the actual SQL Server product. This list of available features is enhanced if you slipstreamed Service Pack 1 into the installation process. We're going to select the database engine and click Next. On the instance configuration screen, we can see there's a lot less options than there were before. That's because we're going to fill in the rest of these options later. We specify an instance ID, and it can really be any instance ID, although I would recommend setting it to whatever instance you're going to be using for your SQL Server. In this case, we're going to use the default instance, so we're going to name it MS SQL Server. We're going to leave the instance root directory as the default, so we can keep everything nice and clean. We click Next to get up the next screen. On the next screen, we see the disk space requirements, and we can see the requirements are a little bit lower than they were before. Doing a basic install required about 2 gigs of space. Now we're looking at about 1 gig of space. But that's because we're not installing things like the management tools and various other features as well. Once we've reviewed this information, we click Next, and we do another rules check. Once we've completed this rules check, we can go ahead and complete the installation process. As you can see, these are very similar rules from what we saw in the normal SQL Server installation process. We can then click Next and review the various features. Again, we can see the configuration file listed here. If we were going to be doing this as part of a big deployment where we wanted to set multiple gold images using the exact same options, we would need that configuration file. As we're going to be doing a sysprep installation and completing the installation later, we don't really need this configuration file, at least not for the sysprep portion of this process. So we can click the Prepare button, and this will actually install the binaries on the files without actually configuring anything. Once the installation is complete, we'll get some basic information saying what components were successfully installed. We click Close. We can now shut down a virtual machine and deploy it to various other machines within our environment. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to complete the installation process using sysprep, so that once you've deployed the virtual machines from the template, you can then use the sysprep process to speed up the installation process of SQL Server.